Welcome to the Same Side Selling Podcast. I know you're shocked to know that I'm your host, Ian Altman. One of the most common questions I get these days is how do we pivot to this virtual environment? How do I make it so that when I'm not connecting with people in person that it looks better? And specifically, how do I make it so that when I'm connecting with people on video, on Zoom, that it doesn't look like the Fisher Price my first video interaction, which kind of undermines your professionalism and can take away from your message. And this week, I'm joined by a dear friend of mine and someone who taught me a great deal about video setup, Adrian Salisbury. Adrian runs a group called Adrian Salisbury Training. He runs something called the Ecamm Live Academy, which is a tool that we use in the Mac world. He also runs a whole Pro Video Academy and helps people when it comes to how to present yourself the best way possible in virtual environments and digitally. So, Adrian, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Ian. Always a pleasure.
You know what? It's always a blast for us to talk. And before we dive into the things that people should be doing, because there's a long list of things that people can learn from, what I'd like to do is I'm going to make it so just you're on screen, and I want to discuss, and maybe you can illustrate some of the pet peeves that we have when it comes to audio and video on Zoom and things that people do. Maybe you can highlight one of my favorites, which is, I call it the Nostril Cam, where the camera is sitting down and it's pointing up through someone's nose and seeing their ceiling behind them, which I guess is great if they have a medical visit for an ear, nose, and throat specialist, or they want someone to look at, a drip on their ceiling, but otherwise not so great. So let's talk a little bit about that. Can you share some ideas of what are the things that people might be seeing?
Yeah, I've actually got a mocked up Zoom call here ready to go, actually. And this is a green screen. Normally I'll just say this up front because you're going to spot it in a minute. That normally this is my office and it is there behind me, but we've got builders in today and I hadn't kind of figured all this out. So I've literally just picked up all my equipment, moved into the house in the dining room and dropped this image in behind me. So when I cut across here, the screen share of Zoom, and so yeah, you're right. If I cut across there, this is what we're referring to, aren't we? People sitting there like this, talking away to us. Yeah, and I think just the difference that you can see there. Clearly, it's the same room, the same lighting, and everything else. Doesn't that look different to be kind of looking and talking down here to you, or actually being up here at eye level?
Yeah. And I think one of the keys is that when people are speaking at eye level, it's how we're used to speaking. I mean, think about it, the whole notion of looking down to somebody. It's like if you met somebody at an event and they were seated and you were standing up, you wouldn't stand right over them and look down at them, having them looking up at you. It would be an awful experience if somebody did that. So we want to make sure that we're not creating that type of environment. And I also want you to touch on here's something that I guarantee people are thinking. They're saying, well, wait a minute. I use the virtual background in Zoom all the time, but it doesn't look like Ian's or Adrian's. Yeah. Why is that? So shed some light into kind of the mistakes that people make when it comes to those virtual backgrounds.
Yeah, I Rachel would laugh, my wife, if she was listening. We were on with it was a lady that was sorting our wheels out, actually. But she was talking to us the other week and she'd clearly just clicked on Zoom. We were on a Zoom call, clicked this virtual background button. And it was like this blob moving around with her because we're asking a lot of Zoom, if you haven't got a green screen, to ask it to actually do this and create this fake background. And you could see little gaps through into her background because this thing was just trying to do it virtually. I think I don't know. I find it a funny mix, really, that on really what is a tool being used by professionals, that they just put a feature like this in as to, right, we can make this background. It really doesn't work well. And I think for the cost of, if we are professionals on here and business people, the cost of getting a green screen just to pop up behind you, I don't know, what, $100? And actually, all of a sudden, it really does take it up. There are other elements to it as well. We're both using Ecamm, which is it does a much better job of it than Zoom does anyway. And we're both using good cameras, which also has a big part to play in it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that oftentimes people get stuck on is, "Yeah, I don't have room for the green screen," and I know the one that you use
Yeah,
is a pop-up one. So it's kind of like
it is.
if you remember screens that people would pull down, this is the same
Yep.
concept, but it pulls up from the ground. And that one that's portable and pops up,
Yeah.
what are they? Like you said, is it $100? Are they $200?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, about $120, I believe.
Yeah,
It's like you'd have at a presentation, just one of these pop-up banners, wouldn't
yeah,
you? But it's wider and it's green,
yeah,
and it does a cracking job. I can just turn the thing off. Let me make sure I'm on the right. Yeah, if I pop it off, there it is behind me, and I
sure,
can literally just pull this thing up and down,
yeah,
and it transforms me into another room.
yeah.
I as I say, this normally is my office, but I love the fact that I could do this and I could just pop this up behind me, change an image, and away we go.
Yeah. And the idea is that what I want people to realize is this is your professional image. So much like you wouldn't
Yeah,
show up to an in-person meeting with dirty shoes, a wrinkled shirt, or anything like that, guess what? When you're meeting with somebody via Zoom, if you present yourself professionally, there's a pretty good chance they're going to respond and say, "Oh, that looks great." When it looks like
yeah,
you're the creature from the Black Lagoon because you're coming in and out of the background, or when the lighting isn't right, or when the quality of the
yeah,
image isn't right, companies often say, "Oh, we can't spend money on this, we can't spend money on that." It's like, look, for less than the
yeah,
cost of putting someone on a plane to visit one client, you can actually have the proper setup and the proper training so that when you meet with
yeah.
people, it looks great. And people say,
It's a
"Oh,
really
that
good
looks
point.
fantastic." It doesn't look like a green screen. It doesn't look like something else. It doesn't look like
Yeah,
something that was the Fisher Price My First video presentation, but instead that it's all tightly tied together and they can actually have a
yeah,
connection with you rather than being distracted by other things.
yeah. And I think we have to respect that. I know certainly at the start of lockdown, when suddenly people were having to work from home and couldn't get hold of these things, it was happening. But we're coming out of that, and actually, either people are going, this is the new normal, and this is what I'm going to, I'm going to be working from here for a long time now. Let's invest in it now. Let's start showing up and looking more professional. I can remember being on a call with someone must have just sat at the front of their bed, really, and I can just see as they were moving, you could just see this untidy bed that they hadn't sort of pulled the duvet back over or anything. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of wanting her to move because I'm finding it quite interesting to see what's going on behind. Um, that shouldn't be happening now. There was a season where we were like, okay,
Yeah,
we can
you're
forgive that.
you're absolutely right. I think there was a period of time where people were tolerant of all sorts of things, and now
Yeah,
it's interesting because I have different pieces of equipment that I bring with me when I'm traveling. So if I know I'm going to be doing a Zoom from the road, I've got different clamps and arms and things so I can
yeah,
attach my camera or lighting onto whatever I need. And I recognize that when I'm on the road, it's rarely going to be an environment where it's going to be the same as when I'm in my studio. Like I'm not going to have everything as robust, but I've done my Same Side Selling Academy coaches corners from the road, and people say you can hardly tell. Now the funny thing is, I should have taken a picture of the room because here I have a clamp that's clamped onto the post that holds the TV in the room, and the view that they had was fine. But if the camera had moved an inch one way or the other, it would have picked up a lamp or a sofa in the hotel room.
yeah,
And in that case, I was connected via Wi-Fi, which is always a little bit sketchy
yeah,
because you don't get the same level of continuous connection. But talk a little bit, if you can, about audio, because I know a lot of times what people say is, "Oh, it's no worries. I'll just my laptop has a microphone and a speaker." Why does it make sense for people to, wherever they can, to have a dedicated microphone? Why does it make sense? Like I have one of these in-ear monitors, so for me, I never have to worry about echo. But talk a little bit about that so people can understand how valuable and important audio is.
yeah. I think. like with the image, and as you mentioned earlier on, we're sitting at eye level. We want this to feel very natural. The same thing wants to happen with the audio, and you don't want it there as a distraction that people are going, turn this up, or I can't quite hear, or there's a fan or something going. Definitely pays to have a microphone externally. They're very affordable now anyway. Um, but to have an external USB mic, certainly if you are on a laptop and a good old MacBook Pro, that those fans can kick in quite quickly. To be able to have a mic closer to you with the fan and the computer over there, rather than the mic actually built into the device that's causing the noise, definitely a good upgrade to get.
Excellent. And then when it comes to lighting, one of the things I also want you to talk about is this notion that a lot of times it's just people have kind of a hodgepodge of different lighting. And I know there's
Mm.
something in your Pro Video Academy, you talk about this, and these are things that I didn't know that I learned. I remember at one point I was having trouble with my green screen keying out properly, and you had said, "Well, is there another light in your room that's a different color?" And of course, to
Yeah.
my eye, I don't know, they all look like lights to me. And sure enough,
Yeah.
I had one light in the room that was a different color, and it messed up everything. So talk a little bit about lighting. Like, I've got 3-point lighting here. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because once again, sure, you can just sit in front of your camera and do your stuff, but what's the value of having a properly lit scene when we're communicating via Zoom?
Firstly, what I want to say is I think more important than your lighting is your camera. And this is a mistake that I see a lot of people do all the time is they'll go, but I've bought 4 or 5 different lights now and I still can't get it bright enough, or I can't get this to do this. But you're on a webcam, a built-in camera on a phone. And actually you're fighting with the inbuilt camera all the time because it's decided this is an auto level. And if I, like with my phone, for instance, if I went out at night, it'll try to brighten it up. If it's sunny, it'll try to darken it down. So adding extra lights isn't going to solve the problem particularly. So I would just want to start there. I definitely think you could spend $1,000 on lighting.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, if I turn this off, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I don't have we'll talk about 3-point lighting, but for me, I've just got one light in front of me here that because I've turned the camera up and the settings in the camera, it's letting in. I'm on a 30% on the light that I've got here in front of me, and that is enough for the camera to do what it needs to do. Um, so when you talk about 3-point lighting, normally this would be photography lighting that you would have one light as a main light in front of you, a key light, and then a fill light to the side, and then another one would be coming back over your corner as a rim light or a hair light.
Yeah.
That would be kind of standard photography lighting kit. You could have 2 lights on you and one dedicated to the background. I see other people actually have just one in front overhead to light them up, and then the other 2 are pointing back on the green screen to get that nice and bright. Yeah, but you're sorry. There's lots of questions in here, Ian. I could go on
But
for half an hour. Um,
Adrian, I think the biggest thing that I take away from this is that everybody, me included, might overthink the lighting, and the reality is
yeah,
that if you have a high enough quality camera, and keep in mind, you're not saying go out and buy a $10,000 camera.
no,
We're talking
no.
about
This
hundreds
is
of
like an
dollars.
800-pound camera. Yeah.
We're talking about a
Um,
camera that's got the right type of sensor. I know that, for example, the camera that I have in the lens, I use the Panasonic Lumix, and I've got a G7, which I don't even think they're producing anymore. But it was that and getting the right lens for it.
yeah,
All of a sudden, the keying became dramatically better, and I didn't
yeah,
necessarily change the lighting. Now there is some lighting stuff that I do, but it's more because in the studio, it kind of in my environment. I feel like I need to do
yeah,
it this way, but what it sounds like is with the right camera gear, it's way more forgiving in terms of the feed
yes,
in that the system is going to key, so you don't get that person coming in and out of the background.
yeah. Sometimes just the existing lighting is okay, and we get that sorted first, and then we sort of add in some lighting to go with it, really. But yeah, you mentioned earlier about mixing in. I think that is again fairly classic mistake that maybe you've got a lamp above you here in your room, and then you've suddenly brought these two lights in front, and it's surprising the difference in that color of the lighting, and you could end up with like orange hair or green actually even sometimes, and what looks, yeah, we wouldn't even consider it, but the camera's seen very different lighting coming from different sides. You're right, we can overthink it, but
Yep.
I wouldn't go out spending a lot of money on lighting if you're just using a webcam. Definitely
Sure.
sort of invest in the camera first.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people often say to me, well, how does it look so crisp? I'm like, well, for starters, here's the camera gear that I use. Oh, I just use a webcam. Now what? I'm like, well,
Yeah,
I have a webcam also. I just don't use it for these types of scenes because
yeah,
it's not a high enough quality. I know it's a shocker that the, call it, less than $1,000 worth of camera gear that I'm using now is better than the roughly $100 camera
yeah.
that's the webcam. It's just designed to do more things. The sensor's more sophisticated. There's more technology in there.
It allows you to do manual control. That would be one of the main things, really. Is, I can adjust, and certainly on green screen, I see so many people just go grey on green screen because the cameras can't, or the webcams, the auto white balance in them just can't handle this green, and it takes the color straight out of you, and
Yeah.
things like that. It doesn't matter how much lighting you put in, it's not going to help.
Yep.
And it comes back to that question we were saying at the start. If this is professional, if this is you doing sales pitches or whatever it might be, is it not worth investing 1,000, 2,000 in a setup like this?
And Adrian, let me ask you this, because for those people who use use a Mac platform, so I will tell you that historically, I spent my entire life being a Windows person, carrying a ThinkPad with me, and the only thing that caused me to become a Mac user is a software Ecamm Live. That then once I
Is
got the
that
software
right?
and said this is pretty cool, how do I learn how to use this? And I enrolled in your program. And just so people know, it, Adrian is set up where he runs these programs absolutely amazing. The instruction in there is top notch, and I don't get anything from it. It's there's no and Adrian was kind enough to say, hey,
Yeah,
do you want an affiliate link? And I said no, because I'd rather be able to just tell people, look, this is
yeah,
great, and I don't get anything for it. But talk about some of the things that people can do, and if you want, you can show them. Once again, if you're listening to this on a podcast, I encourage you to go on to samesiteselling.com and pull up the podcast or look it up on YouTube so you can actually watch this and you'll see it. But I'd love for you to show some people things that you can do in this Ecamm environment. And I know you've got a Ecamm Live Academy coming up at the end of February. And
yep,
it's like a 2-week program. And it's just
yep.
absolutely, it's an hour a day. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I enjoy just being in the community, great people experimenting with stuff, people going live, figuring out how to do all
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna flip the screen just to you so you can show people some of the things that you can do that are really easy to do in this environment that maybe you can't do otherwise.
Yeah. And actually, quick shout out to Ian, because I remember when Ian came through our Ecam Academy the first time and did some very clever things there, Ian. You pre-recorded some little videos and you were using the clicker to move from one scene to the next, which is kind of like PowerPoint using slides. So Ian knows his way around this. Definitely, if you're on the podcast, do come over because this is quite cool. We're talking specifically about Zoom, really, and how you can use Ecamm into Zoom. We just ran a whole weekend training on it. And so things that you can't typically in Zoom. So this now I can send this feed straight out of Ecamm into Zoom. So what you're seeing here is exactly how it's looking on my Zoom chat. And uh, you're quite restricted in Zoom in that you kind of click and go, right, I've got my camera, or if I want to do a screen share, I firstly click screen share, then I decide entire screen. I can set everything up in here in advance. So at the click of a button, I can move across on here. So let me demonstrate a couple of things. This is how we can bring in, for instance, the Zoom chat. So did you know you could do this? You can actually, that chat window that you have over there, you can pull it, you can detach it from your Zoom window so it sits on a floating window, And then in Ecamm, I can pick this up. I can crop in the edges so that you can't see where it's saying things like this, the chat and things up here. What about polls? I don't know if you've discovered polls that you can do inside of Ecamm, but you can do very simple polls that you can set up in advance. You could do more advanced ones depending on which plan you're on. And again, pretty cool to be able to say, "Come on, then let's jump in. I'm going to put this up on your screen. Let us know what you think." And all of a sudden, it's not over there in the chat, and it's back to the camera, but it's completely submersive. We're in the same space together here. I can completely brand this up. If I wanted to make it look this way, I literally start with a blank canvas and go, where do I want to put myself? Do I like this little frame around it? Do I want it rounded or squared? And I'll drop a logo in. I'll move this chat around to a different place. Um, uh, it is completely fluid as to how I want to design this and lay it out. And one of the things I was just showing Ian actually before I came on was we had to go with this. We ran like a 3-hour long Zoom call, and we wanted to be able to put breaks in it. Firstly, so that we could just have a break and use the bathroom if need be, but also to give people a chance to do exactly the same thing. So that allowed us, we can preset the time, we can choose the music, we can choose the animation and things. But all of a sudden, we've just gone to a whole nother level with our presentation. And if I think, sadly, Zoom is seen as being a pretty boring place. And I think maybe it's this necessary evil that we all got forced onto Zoom and we don't want to be doing it. But imagine when people show up to your Zoom call and all of a sudden that's the experience they have. They're going to be coming away going, I can't believe this. This guy just did all this and he brought this on screen and he made music appear. And
the idea is that all of these things we're showing get surfaced through natively into Zoom, so that when I'm doing things via Zoom, what people will often say to me is they say, well, but you can't do that on Zoom. How are you doing that? Because I saw that you had this show up or you had that show up. So for example, in my Same Side Selling Academy, we'll often share different questions that people have. So someone will have a question, and what we do is we bring it up on screen. So it can be something like this. So you'll see, how do I, and you see the question on the screen for those of you watching, but it's, how do I manage a meeting and stay focused on the same side quadrants? When I'm, when I have a large audience of 12 plus people. And keep in mind, it's like, I'm just pulling up things on the fly and just everything show up or disappear. But the idea is that I can do that. And people say, well, wait a minute, you didn't share your screen. How did that show up? And sometimes I'll have it so that slides are behind me, or I'm in the slide, or things like that. And it's just all about visual interest. And it's not for the gimmick of it, but instead what we have to think about is, how are we keeping people engaged in our conversation? Because if they're distracted because your image is coming in and out, if they can't see what's on the screen, if they're going from full screen to not full screen and back and forth, those are all distractions that can take away from your message. If you're on the call, you're on a video chat, and their first thought is the person really needs to trim their nose hairs, then you probably have that Nostril Cam looking up. If they say, hey, you should probably paint your ceiling, that tells you that it's not the right angle. Because right now, Adrian and I can have a conversation where we're looking face to face and see each other. In fact, there are ways that I can make it so that Adrian's on screen. So very often we'll bring people on in Zoom side by side in this environment. If we wanted to, I could have Adrian come in green screen, have him sitting next to me. And it would have looked like, now they're in the same place. And not to say that you're going to want to use that in every scenario, but instead what I want you to realize is that with this Ecamm Live platform, and something that I use in all of my Zoom meetings and I use in all of my recordings. So everything we do in the Same Side Selling Academy, we record in the same environment. The idea is that we get that interactive experience of dropping in other graphics, of really engaging people that we can't do otherwise. And I will tell you that the next Coaches Corner that we do, so we do a Coaches Corner in our academy the first Wednesday of every month, until you showed me, and here's the way to bring the chat in, I had forgot about doing that, which is just another example of the kinds of things that you share and teach people that we might overlook otherwise. And all of a sudden I was like, ah,
The
I'm such a fool. I should do that.
the only caution with that, Ian, before you go doing it, is to know that that chat window there includes public and personal chat. So if you've got someone reach out to you and go, "That Brian's really annoying," can't you kick him off or something?
Yeah.
He's going to appear right there in front of you. So either disable the private chat side of it. Um, I just want to spell that one out. I don't want you coming
No, no,
back to me
you know
going, "I
what?
did you a trick and put that on."
I appreciate you sharing that. So, Adrian, what's the best way for people to connect with you to learn more about whether it's the Ecamm Academy or the Pro Video Academy? There's a lot of great resources you have. I want people to be able to
Yeah,
reach out and learn more from you because I will tell you that if you search, if you Google just about anything related to video, Ecamm, anything else, you're going to see one of hundreds of videos that Adrian generously shares freely out there
yeah.
beyond his training. So just so you know, the man's a legend in this space. But how can people find you?
Yeah, and if people are like, "Why is he making all these different courses? Where's the logic in that? How can you look that good on camera?" And I went, "Well, to me, it's pretty straightforward." So we built this academy very much to say, "This is how you get going with this equipment," and it isn't. I think if someone's reached out to me and said, "I want to look like that," then why show four different camera options and a multitude of lighting options? So my academy is very much, here's my equipment, here are a set of videos to show you how to do it, and now I've got a community space where you can come in and we'll tweak the lighting and we'll get rid of, if you're getting colored hair come through and things like that, we'll sort all that out in our community. So it started in that Pro Video Academy, and then I realized I've got an audience of people here that are then saying, "Oh, now what do I do with it? You should be using Ecamm to make your videos." Uh, so that's why we started up an Ecamm Academy, and we do a YouTube Academy and a Kajabi Academy, all really around that person who we've just helped get going on camera. Um, so any of those, they all fit under the umbrella of Adrian Salisbury Training, and adriansalisbury.com is our website where you can find all of those individual academies. The thing to say, Pro Video, you can join at any time, but the Ecamm Academy and the YouTube Academy, they both only appear twice a year. So we're about to open the doors, as you mentioned, on the 28th, to run that for 2 weeks, and then it won't be up again until October. And you mentioned it earlier, but that community is really powerful. And I think if you'd have just downloaded my course, watched the videos, that's only half of it, really. It's then having a space to come into and go, well, let's and the kind of accountability and challenge to do it. Let's have a go at doing that and bringing some scenes on. Let's have a
Eh,
go at interviewing somebody. And so that's why we've kept it in that cohort course that you were working through together.
Yeah, no, you know what, and I love it because even as somebody who is a professional and considers myself a professional in terms of video presentation, I love the fact that I'd connect with a handful of people and say, okay, we're gonna do a session tonight. We're gonna do a Zoom session. We're gonna play with this feature, that feature. We're gonna do a Facebook Live, and we're gonna play with
Yeah,
these different features. And it's things that were it not for the structure in the program, I would have said, "Oh, cool, I can do that," and I never would have done it. Instead of
yeah,
now, if someone says, "Hey, can you go live with this?" Of course, because I did it half a dozen times as part of the course. Now it's comfortable for me. So,
and
and if you charged 5 times what you charge, it would still be a good value. So it's something that, if I recall correctly, it's at least twice, if not 3 times, that I've gone through the program, and I use this tool every day. But it's a matter of
yeah,
I always hear or learn something new that I didn't pick up on before. So I
yeah,
encourage people to check it out. Adrian Salisbury Training. We'll have a link in the show notes as well. But always just great information. So when this question was coming up and people said, "How do I make it so my Zoom is not generic? How do I stand out in
yeah.
these digital communications?" There was only one person to talk to, and you were it. So thanks so much for coming on, Adrian.
Thank you very much. I think really just as a final thing, the uh, what you don't want people doing when they come onto your Zoom call is going, "Oh, really? He looks an amateur. She doesn't look great," or it's that's what you don't want. That foundation, really, I really would encourage people to consider getting this camera, a microphone, light, or whatever it be. It doesn't have to be mine, but this setup, and really just invest in this, because if you're on here, how much better for you to show up on the other end of a Zoom call and people go, oh wow, you look like a professional. So yeah, thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Adrian. Let me give people a quick 30-second recap of what I think are key pieces of information that you can use and apply to your business. First, focus on the camera, because many people, me included, might focus on the lighting and other things, but the right camera, other than just a webcam, could make the difference. And Adrian's got a lot of suggestions and guidance on where you go and what type of equipment you can get without breaking the bank. Second, make sure from a microphone standpoint, you're not just going with the lowest common denominator. For not a lot of money, you can add a microphone that's going to add good sound quality for your interactions. And then look at using other tools to better enhance the experience and engage your audience. If you're someone who's a Mac user, Ecamm Live is something that I endorse incredibly. It's what shifted me to the Mac world, because when I saw this, I said, okay, I guess I'm getting a Mac now. And now I've got multiple Mac machines. So this is almost a commercial for Apple and Ecamm all at once. And of course, if you want to learn how to do all these things, visit Adrian Salisbury Training. And if you search for Adrian Salisbury, if you search for Ecamm, he'll probably come up. And he's a great resource to help you get there. So thanks again for joining me, Adrian. Thank all of you for joining me as well. And we will see you on the next Same Side Selling podcast.